heart coherence and heart resonance bring a foundation to our experience of what it means to be aware and calm. And these things work well together, because if we're just too relaxed, we won't be as aware. And if we're too aware, we might be hypervigilant or tense. So there's a balance between the two. And you could say that this corresponds to the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, these two nerve channels that control our rest and digest and our fight or flight response, that they're essentially the hot and cold currents that move through the body. One says cool down, relax. The other one says rev up, let's get going. And that these two nerve channels are the two of three main nerve channels in the spine, and these run up the whole spine, innervating through all of the nervous tissue of the organs that rest along the spine at the various organ areas in the body of the reproductive system and the digestive system and the eliminative system and the heart and the lungs and the brain and even the throat and the larynx. So we have this awareness of the physiology and how that is influenced by these essentially go, go, go or slow, slow, slow responses that our nervous system give us. And of course, sometimes over time we develop a hyper or a hypo response to things. Either there's a too much response or not enough response. And this can often be traced back to our heart coherence and our ability to respond to the environment. And that is largely based on our ability to balance, our ability to relax and be aware and alert. And that is directly correlated to the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system and the organs and tissues in the spine. Quick recap. So now we have essentially a lot of different practices, often that are related to, say, meditation or breathing or embodiment generally, and working with the fact that these energies move thoughts through the body, that the body, one may say, is that like a mirror of the subconscious mind, and that it's our relationship to it. And we find out more about how we're storing information in our body when we connect to that through embodiment practices, like yoga or qigong or tai chi, other mindfulness practices, but it could also just be exercise when you are paying attention to the mind-muscle connection or to the feeling of the heart, etc., that there's a certain simplicity to movement when we're aware of that movement at deeper and deeper levels. And in the same way, there's a great value to stillness. And one could say that movement and stillness are kind of like those hot and colds, the sympathetic and parasympathetic. We need the stress release of cortisol, which is healthy for us to be able to exercise or to move and be about and getting work done. And then we also require this rest and digest that says recover, rejuvenate, heal, and literally sleep. To do that is a very valuable one. So then we have at the center of the spine, in between these two currents of the parasympathetic and sympathetic, which have branches throughout the autonomic nervous system that runs into the body. The main source of them for those two, the hot and cold, being in the center of the spine, and then the cerebrospinal fluid sort of serving as the main nerve channel in the body that delivers neurotransmitters, hormones, etc., along the vertical axis of the spine in the hollow tube of the spinal column, which is in the center of the vertebrae. And when we are aware of that, then we are more at the deepest layer of ourself. And that, in the same way that we could say there's a mechanical process of that energy flowing up and down the spine to deliver information in the form of neurotransmitters and hormones, etc., that we have this ability to tune into the experience of what that is, which is essentially heart coherence. And long story short, there's a process of neutralizing the currents of the hot and cold of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, which lets us tap into that central column, the cerebrospinal fluid, and this gives us a greater access and greater awareness to the deep stillness that occurs in the body when we are in a state of heart coherence. So most of this happens through stillness and breathing, to be clear that there's a certain amount of energy and vigor required just to get the body strong and stable and capable of keeping a coherent heart rhythm in the first place. And that's why exercise is very important, and right diet and generally self-care and being kind to yourself. And there's the then sort of next phase or process that lets us be like, okay, I've done all the work, I've done all the things that I need to do in the world. Let me sit and relax. Kind of like same thing that most of us do at the end of the day, is we have some nice time to sit and eat dinner, or whatever, watch something, or maybe some of us meditate or drink tea or make art or whatever. The main thing being we have this sort of thing that happens in us that goes from the hot of the work to the cool of the rest. And there is essentially another phase, and that's sort of when we get into this deepest layer where we experience the essence of our energy, and there is a specific rhythm that the heart emits when we balance out those two patterns of the sympathetic and parasympathetic through tuning into the inhale and the exhale of the breath, and then balancing the breath essentially in an equal count so that we are balancing the two sides of the spine or two sides of the nervous system, which really are merged in the center at the cerebrospinal fluid. So when the two channels finally go from back and forth to still, this is a still point in the heart. And a still point in the heart, it can be simplified to just say it's when our heart rate variability has increased and our actual heart rate has decreased. And when we get into that space, then we are like sending out magnetic pulse waves of energy from the heart, which then translates into joyful and enjoyable experiences, both in, say, a formal practice, say, as a heart resonance guided meditation or your own practice of choice, or anything else when you're in relation in the world or doing work in the world. That this experience is something that many of us already experience or have an awareness of. At some level, we already have hearts and brains and nervous systems, so there's nothing new here. It's just a matter of seeing that there's a pattern and seeing how to describe the pattern and be aware that that pattern is something that we can influence and then in turn change ourselves. And rather than trying to change anyone else necessarily, it's just our own practice. And sharing this practice is wonderful. And at the same time, it's still up to the individual to be able to do this on their own. And that is the joy of it, is that no one else can really do it for you, that it's yours and your experience to have on your own. So enjoy, and thank you for listening.